Coming up, Debbie and I here for our Thursday roundup. Why Thursday? Because tomorrow, Friday, is the 4th of July, so no podcast. We'll pick it up on Monday. Anyway, we're going to be talking about, my Nick Fuentes debate from earlier in the week. The peculiar connection between God and artificial intelligence. The ups and downs of the big, beautiful bill. Why liberal and conservative justices are really two different species. Why so many young people are attracted to socialism, and the rage of the victims over the Bryan Kohberger plea deal. Hey, if you're watching on X, Rumble, or YouTube, listening on Apple or Spotify, please subscribe to my channel. Hit the subscribe, the follow, the notifications button, especially, by the way, if you're on YouTube, where I think I'm being suppressed. So I'm trying to unsuppress myself. You can help. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
America needs this voice. The times are crazy. In a time of confusion, division, and lies, we need a brave voice of reason, understanding, and truth. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
Debbie and I here for our Friday roundup. And as I mentioned a moment ago, tomorrow is the 4th of July, so no podcast, but I want to, take a moment. I think we both should as immigrants and just celebrate what the United States has meant for us, but has also meant for the world. It's been a country that has done more good, I think, for the world than any other superpower. It has been the kindest, gentlest sort of top dog in world history, much better than the British Empire, which came before it, and certainly much better than earlier empires, whether it's the Ottomans, the Romans, and so on. And it's also made, I think, a very good life for so many people. I think what makes people nervous now is the fear that this American dream, which is the representation of this American idea, is fizzling out for so many people. I think that's the whole driving force between Make America Great Again. Any thoughts on the 4th and what else to say about it?
Well, I love the 4th, but it is kind of funny that I was just telling you before the podcast that we have not been in America the last two 4th of Julys because we were in enemy territory.
Exactly.
Celebrating the 4th of July, which is kind of funny because we're in Great Britain watching Wimbledon.
Right.
And so this year we're going to have finally our 4th of July in America.
In Texas, in fact.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about something that happened earlier this week, something that you were, I have to admit, ambivalent about, to put it mildly, namely my debate with Nick Fuentes. Generally, when I say, hey, honey, I'm thinking of doing this debate, you are not too happy about it. But why is that?
Well, I don't like to watch you debate at all. Anyone.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, it is kind of funny because I watched you debate Bill Ayers
right.
on Megyn Kelly, but that was really not really a debate because I think it was you and Megyn Kelly against Bill Ayers.
We each had a shot at him. She did sort of, her show was 2 hours. I believe it was 2 hours. Or maybe
it was a special, but I don't remember how long it was. But
she's like part one, you debate Bill Ayers, and part two, she was doing this like searching. Investigative interview with him.
That's right.
But I told Bill Ayers, I was the one who brought him on that show, and I told him, I said, hey, are you up for this? Because number one, we'll have a feisty debate, but it'll be.
It's really funny how you debate these people, but you are not like mean spirited. You're not mean to them. You actually are not unfriendly to them.
Right.
And I think with Nick, it was no exception. And I don't know anything about him, but just watching some of his clips, I couldn't watch. Let's put it that way. I just couldn't watch.
Well, I've seen the same clips, and I thought that's the Nick Fuentes that I would be up against.
Yeah.
And I was kind of ready for it, but because there is a way to respond to that kind of wisecrackery and that kind of making light of serious issues, there is a way to handle that. But as it turns out, that Nick didn't show up. The Nick who showed up is someone, well, I mean, look, the guy is passionately anti-Israel. I would say he's not exactly like a Hamas apologist, but he's very much he's in a way making the case for Iran. Well, they're being reasonable. They're threatened, Dinesh, and since Israel has nuclear weapons, if you were an Iranian, wouldn't you want to have nuclear weapons? Hey, even after the American strikes, there really weren't any protests on the Iranian street. Now, think of how naive that is. The regime controls the street. This is like saying, the Soviet Union must have been really popular because I didn't see a lot of protests on the streets of, Moscow or Leningrad. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's because the regime controls all of that. You don't see a lot of protests today in China, kind of for the same reason.
Yeah. I like how you got him on MAD, with mutual assured destruction, because unfortunately, Iran is not going to partake in MAD because.
Well, yeah. So let's just set a little bit of context. Basically, what Nick was saying is, well, yeah, the Iranians say death to America and all that, but we don't really take them seriously because, they may claim to be a death cult. They want martyrdom. But the Soviets were also a death cult, and we heard a lot about that. And I was like, Nick, nobody ever said the Soviets were a death cult. Whatever you said about Lenin or Stalin or Chernenko, Brezhnev, Andropov, all of them, nobody said they were suicidal. Nobody said that they wanted to be martyrs. In fact, the whole idea, you mentioned MAD, mutually assured destruction, is premised on the idea that both sides want to protect their life.
That's right. They don't want to die. Neither one of them wants to die.
It's a Mexican standoff between heavily armed adversaries.
That's right. It's mutually assured that they will both be destroyed.
And therefore, neither of one will take the steps to put themselves in that kind of danger. Yeah, that was the whole premise of the Cold War. Yep. But, guess what? I mean, Nick's 26, so think about it. He's born, I guess, 1999.
Yeah.
All of this is for him ancient history. And not only that, I mean, look, I could say that World War II is ancient history, but I think in our generation, we loved history.
Right.
We immersed ourselves in history. And for me, history meant everything going back to the 5th century BC and before.
Yeah.
But I noticed that with the younger generation, one of their favorite phrases is back in the day. Back in the day.
And they say back in the day, meaning our day.
Yeah, back in the day means even like the 1990s is back in the day. Let alone the 70s, let alone World War II.
Yeah.
So there is a myopia there. And I think in some ways that showed in the debate. Nick had his points, and he's a very, articulate guy. And well-informed in his own way. He knows detailed information about the Wahhabis in Saudi Arabia and so on.
Yeah.
But his knowledge is short in the sense that it sort of stops at about 2009.
Yeah, true.
Right? And
true. I wonder what his parents think of him. Because, his parents are probably our age. Right? So
I hear that he's, obviously you and I, we don't watch him. And in fact, one interesting thing before this debate was, a couple of people mentioned to me, you may want to go back and watch his videos. And then I was talking to Danielle, and she goes, Dad, don't do that, because you don't need to be artificially prepared for the debate. You just go on there as if you have heard of Nick Fuentes, but you don't know who he is. And that is what I did. I did not watch a single of his videos, except the little promo where he goes, I'm the alpha male. None of these Con Inc. guys want to debate me. So he kind of had this big, Dinesh is up for a big surprise. Of course, by the end of the debate, he was singing a totally different tune. He was very respectful. He's like, Dinesh, you're a great debater. And so I think it was chastening experience is maybe too strong a word. But my goal in doing all this was really more to, first of all, to try to reach some of these people who buy into the, Israel is controlling the United States. I thought, let them at least hear the other side of that. And number two, just to give a backhanded rap to all these taboos and all this effort to squelch free speech and affirm the idea that it's better to have it out. I mean, that we're not afraid to have it out, and we still believe in the classical liberal idea that the best ideas are going to win.
Yeah. Well, this definitely was not reminiscent of when you went to Michigan State and that lunatic got up and started yelling at you and yelling at me.
Using the F word.
Using the F word. And I lost it. I literally lost it.
Because he actually attacked you personally.
He attacked me personally.
He wasn't just attacking me.
No, and I literally was.
I think you stood up and you said something like, "Sit down."
I did.
And then he was like, "Get out of the country."
Yeah, then he said.
And then you were unhinged.
Yeah, I was unhinged at that point, and this is one reason why I don't like watching you in debates.
Well, I think you thought this one would be like that.
Yeah,
I didn't know really, to be honest. And but as I say, Nick was, well, first of all, I was wearing a polo shirt, one of my Vineyard Vines shirts.
Yeah.
Nick came with a no, I'm wearing a Nautica today, but Nick came with a tie, a little jacket. And so he looked like a little preppy,
a little professor,
a young in fact, he looked kind of the way I looked when I was his age, right? Because I was doing that kind of thing, not with the same point of view, but nevertheless,
a long time ago.
And we had Alex Jones as the moderator. Now, Alex is a little bit in Nick's camp. And I think Alex was getting a little frustrated because the case, the attack on Israel, really wasn't going all that well. And I was making points like, look, are you actually saying that the little Satan controls the great Satan? I mean, certainly that's not what the Iranians, right? The Iranians see it that the great Satan is the big problem. And the great Satan has a little helper called Israel. That's the little Satan. I made the point, how can a country that is made up of 10 million people roughly control a country of 350 million that is vastly bigger, vastly stronger, vastly richer? It makes no sense. It's like saying that you have a mosquito that's controlling the elephant. At most, the mosquito can slightly irritate the elephant. But, and then I finally said, well, listen, if you're truly saying that this tiny Israel, the size of New Jersey, is controlling the United States, then the Jews must really be the master race. And I think at that point, Alex was like, well, I'm looking at the feed and, everybody's anti-Israel. Well, everybody's anti-Israel in part because they've been listening to you and Nick Fuentes. I mean, I was very much in his milieu.
You didn't go into the whole spirituality and miracle of Israel either, which I think I would have done because that's, I don't particularly care for people that can't see that for what it is.
Well, you were making a point in the car, which I think is worth mentioning, and that is that you said, look, it's not that I'm pro-Israel, it's that I'm pro-God. You're like, my motive is not the interest of Israel per se, it is to kind of follow the direction of God.
Well, it's God's land.
Right.
And it's God's people.
Right.
Period. End of story.
Right. So now I didn't go there. I approached that destination because somebody actually, I had not really mentioned biblical archaeology, but someone brought it up. And they were like, what makes you say that the Jews are like the original inhabitants? I mean, they're like,
because
they just actually kind of gifted me that question, right? By the way, one of the funniest questions that came up toward the end, a guy calls up from the American Communist Party. And in a way, this was extremely embarrassing to Nick.
Sure wasn't the Democrats? Anyway.
No. He's like, I'm on the American Communist Party. And he goes, Nick, you're such a wimp. He goes, you keep talking about how the people in Gaza are being mistreated, and you keep talking about how Israel is so awful. He goes, why aren't you openly on the side of Hamas? Why aren't you openly on the side of Hezbollah? Why aren't you openly, I don't know if he went this far, but why aren't you on the side of Al-Qaeda and ISIS? These are people trying to fight the oppression of Israel and the oppression of the West. Now, Nick was kind of writhing in his seat because, Nick doesn't really, Nick's whole point is I'm like a Catholic, I'm America first. He doesn't want to come across as like, I like these brown Muslims, you know, that'll make him sound too Ilhan Omarish. And yet what the American communist guy was saying is the logic of what you're saying is that when people are oppressed in the way that you say, they're going to try to reclaim their dignity by fighting back. Maybe they'll get shot, maybe they'll get killed, but at least they died, you can say, standing on their feet and not, you know, prostrate on the ground. And so Nick had a lot of difficulty coping with this question. It was, in a way, one of his uncomfortable moments in the debate.
Yeah. Well, by default, he actually is on the side of Ilhan Omar.
Well, I talked about Ilhan Omarism, and I also talked about Obama. And I essentially said that he was not just a Democrat, but he was echoing. Think of what Obama said about Iran, right? Iran does not have necessarily nuclear aspirations, and even if they do, we can talk them out of it. We can deter them through a signed piece of paper, namely a treaty. So I basically told Nick, you're saying what Obama's saying minus the pellets of cash. So that's your difference with Obama. Obama sent them pallets of cash. You wouldn't do that. Otherwise, you agree with Obama basically 100%. And
Ouch.
That was not good. Nick was like, well, I've never been called a Democrat before. I don't know where this is coming from, Dinesh. And then, of course, he went to something which I think was equally bad for him, which is the two parties are the same.
Oh,
Which,
yeah,
think
the
about
uniparty.
it. Well, yeah. And I was like, look, you know, we all sometimes indulge in the rhetoric of there are people on both sides who drink at the swamp. But to claim that there's no difference between Trump and Biden or Trump and Kamala Harris, to claim that the country, let's say right
Or
now,
Trump
in
and
the last
Obama.
6 months, would have been the same if Kamala Harris was the president. See, he was forced to say, yes, it would. And that is patently absurd. So anyway, those are just a few highlights. Microplastics, small pieces of plastic are now everywhere in our food, our drinking water, even our air. A new study shows 94% of U.S. tap water and bottled water worldwide contain microplastics. Microplastics are in 88% of our meat and seafood. Even if you eat clean, you're still taking in plastic and it's damaging your health from the inside out. These particles pass through your gut barrier, they enter your bloodstream, they trigger a wave of oxidative stress, which scientists now link to inflammation, mutations, and even cancer. BPA in plastics is known to disrupt hormones, damage DNA, and is now even showing up in the human brain. But there's hope, and it starts in the gut. Kimchi One from Bright Core Nutrition is one of the most powerful natural detoxifiers on the planet. It contains a unique probiotic strain proven to degrade BPA, plus over 900 other strains that help flush toxins, restore gut health, and support your immune system. This isn't just about digestion, it's about protecting your future. Right now, my viewers and listeners can get 25% off Kimchi One with code Dinesh at mybrightcore.com/Dinesh. But even better, if you call, you get 50% off plus free shipping. Here's the number, 888-927-5980. You'll also get a free bottle of vitamin D3, but only when you call. Here's the number again, 888-927-5980. When I flip a container around, I can't pronounce it or recognize the ingredients. Well, I just put it back. And that's why you'll find Balance of Nature's fruits and veggie supplements on a shelf in my home. Every single ingredient is a fruit or veggie plucked from the soil. Take a look. These are the fruits and veggies in a capsule. Really easy to take. By the way, no binders, no additives, no artificial colors, no fillers. Just whole fruit and veggies, gluten-free and vegan-friendly. These harvested ingredients are freeze-dried into a fine powder using an advanced vacuum cold process to better preserve nutritional value. I can say with absolute confidence that I'm getting 31 ingredients from fruits and veggies every single day with Balance of Nature. Imagine a platter with 31 different fruits and veggies on it every day. Join me in taking Balance of Nature, and here's a really good deal for you. Use my discount code AMERICA. You get 35% off plus free shipping and a money-back guarantee. Call 800-246-8751. Again, 800 246-8751, or go to balanceofnature.com. Use discount code America, and you get 35% off plus free shipping. So let's talk about something else. Artificial intelligence, which I've talked about earlier this week. But I saw something really interesting. That was a comment that was motivated by a video made by, of all people, Taylor Lorenz. You remember her? She's sort of this social media writer for the Washington Post. In any event, the idea here, we'll just talk about the idea. Don't worry about Taylor Lorenz. The idea is that some people are treating AI as a kind of secular god. And what I mean by that is AI is a kind of distillation of human knowledge, right? You pose a question to it. It sort of, not only does it forage the internet, so it has a wider body of information than any individual or even group of individuals has access to, but it then collects this information and formulates an answer. And so AI gives you kind of this view from on high, because it's not your view or my view. It's not
It's kind of all-knowing.
It's kind of all-knowing and omniscient,
Yes,
to use
yes.
another word. Now, in reality, AI is not that, because AI has built-in algorithms. That's how you can get woke AI. Why? Because woke people made it that way. It's programmed to give you woke answers. But it's not programmed in a sort of a 2 + 2 = 4 mode. It's programmed in, these are some reliable sources you can consult. And think of it, if your reliable sources are like Axios and the Daily Beast and the New Republic, then that's where AI is going to go digging for information. So, but you had a thought about this sort of godlike aspect of AI, which was a little different from all this, but ties into it.
Yeah, I said, when you were talking a couple of days ago about it, I go, the way, because how AI can turn on humans, right? Can essentially eradicate us, right? And I thought to myself, well, in a weird way, God made the world, God made us. And some of us have turned away from God. In other words, some people think they're better than God or smarter than God, and they basically fight back, right? They fight back to God. And so AI, I feel like if it does that to us, it's treating us like we treat God.
Very important idea. And I would go even further and say that it's not some of us. It's actually all of us. And by that I mean, let's look at the meaning of the Garden of Eden, right? In the Garden of Eden, God says, basically, don't eat from the tree. Now, the way I understand that is, it's not that notice that God doesn't give any reasons. God doesn't say the fruit is bad for you. He doesn't say that, he says nothing.
It's like, because I say so.
It's because I say so, right? Because so what God is basically saying is that I'm God, I made you. You should understand that because I'm the creator, I know what's best for you. So I'm telling you, don't do this, right? And what do? They go and eat.
They do
right?
it.
So that's their way of saying, no, we don't, God, thank you for your plan, but we're going to go with our plan. And our plan is rational. And I say rational because the serpent appears, and the serpent says, well, listen, why wouldn't you eat? The reason God doesn't want you to eat is because that way you may become like God, and God doesn't want you to become like him. So it's a way of him keeping you down. So Satan offers all these ingenious arguments. Now, some of these I'm giving you, by the way, not from the Bible directly, but from Milton's marvelous rendition of all of this in Paradise Lost. But anyway, Adam and Eve think, you know what, it makes sense for us to follow our own plan, which I think is by and large the position of the human race. And this is what the Bible means when it says all have sinned. What it means is not that we all necessarily commit particular sins, although we do, but rather all of us think that our plan is better than God's plan.
Yeah.
In fact, even our prayers, I think, are proof of that.
Yeah.
Why? Because our prayers are always, hey, God, listen, whatever idea you have for me, I have a better idea.
Yeah.
How about if I get an A on my exam? Oh, I have a better idea. How about if I find a pot of gold in my backyard?
Yeah.
Oh, how about if I get a promotion? Wouldn't my life be better? Wouldn't you agree, God, that this update to your plan is really a good one? Whereas if you truly prayed, you'd be like, God, you have
God's
a plan for
will.
my life. Whatever that is, let's have that.
God's
I want
will,
that.
God's will be done.
God's will be done.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
no plan I can come up with could possibly compete.
Well, and look at his plan. His plan was to send his son to die for the very sins he knew we were going to commit in the first place.
Right.
You know?
And I think what that shows is that that God's plan in the end was even better than the original plan. Now, it's hard to speak in this way because, of course, God is not in time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when God made the world, he already knew that the
absolutely.
world would be fallen. He already knew that it would need a redeemer. He already knew what he would have to do. He knew all of this simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very profound concept when you reflect on it a little bit. All right.
Yeah.
AI, we hope, goes in the right direction. Let's move on to some somewhat more prosaic topics.
Big, beautiful bill?
The big, beautiful bill. And this, unpleasant revival of the clash between Musk and Trump. It flared up again this past week. Almost a replay of what happened a few weeks ago when I thought that they had both kind of buried the hatchet. At the very least decided let's kind of go our own ways. And now suddenly again, Trump is digging at Elon. Trump is we may want to take away his subsidies. Somebody even asked,
no.
do you have any plans to deport him?
Oh, no.
This is just too much, as you say. You like to say,
I like to
it's
say
too much.
It's too much, or he's too much.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, which is what you said to me about the Fuentes debate. You're too much. But I think it's a good thing that this bill is going to go through for all its flaws. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not an unflawed bill. But you know why it's an unflawed bill? Because we have a flawed Congress.
Yeah.
Right? We do not have decisive majorities, let alone supermajorities. And so I said on the podcast yesterday that the real solution for Elon is not to start another party. And you are on the warpath against anybody who talks about starting a new party, unless it's the communists, right?
Yeah. So, sometimes I like to troll Communist Party USA website. Don't ask me why, but I do. And their big thing is they want another party. And I was like, that's a great idea. A party for the left wing. Why not? It'll divide them up and that they can never win. Once they do that, they can never win. So, but when I hear it coming on our side, I cringe because I think of Ross Perot and I think of the Ross Perot effect and how it is that Elon Musk is such a brilliant mind. He can't see this pie being divided that way. I kind of don't understand that.
Could it be that what happens sometimes, I think, is that you allow a personal affront to take over and cloud your reasoning a little bit? It's not that you're not capable of the reasoning. You completely are. But what's happened is it's like sometimes when, let's just say someone in the family, even unintentionally, says something deeply hurtful, right? It so blinds you that you are so focused on that. I think with Elon, he has a sense of being betrayed by the GOP. Not even so much by Trump, because I think he knows that Trump has to make the best of the situation he has, right? But I think Elon thinks, guess what? The Congress, we have majorities in both parties. Couldn't they have done more to consolidate Doge? Mm-hmm. Couldn't they have done more to keep the deficit down? At least make a serious effort. Mm-hmm. After everything he did, they're like, no real effort at all. Now they're doing other good things. They are 10,000 new border agents and make the tax cuts permanent. But I think Elon's point of view is what happened to the one issue that I was concerned about. I was then kind of officially deputized to do, and I did at great cost.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but also though, doesn't he understand that if he were to bring in a new party, the America Party, as he calls it, the only people that it's going to hurt are the very people that want fiscal responsibility.
This is right.
Because the Democrats don't know what that is. And there is no way that if the Democrats win by default, because we self-destructed,
they will run the country.
That we will ever have fiscal responsibility would be the last thing that they even think about. I mean, we have. No,
they are, even today, if you look at what Democrats are saying, they're saying things like, and I mentioned this earlier this week, John Hickenlooper, he's like, it is very shocking that the wealthiest country in the world cannot provide free health care to everyone, right? And by everyone, it's a very carefully considered word. He doesn't mean citizens.
No, he means everyone.
He means everyone physically in this country. Yeah. So he wants the 10 million illegals brought under Biden to get free health care. And it's all based on the premise that we're They actually do now.
Yeah.
I think they're being taken off, by the way, in the bill, which is a good thing. At least some of them are. Now, the point is, how can a country that is $37 trillion in debt talk like this, right? How can a senator speak with a straight face in this manner? It's like a guy, even if he lives in a nice house, a guy lives in an expensive house, but he's, let's just say, $10 million in debt. And he sits around with his family. He goes, given that we're the wealthiest guys in the neighborhood, we have the tallest house, why don't we, you're like, stop talking nonsense. You're in the hole.
But that's how they talk, liberals, the left. Democrats.
The left, right.
They talk like that because they do truly believe money grows on trees. They truly believe that.
Do you think that's it, or do you think that they know it doesn't, but they don't care about running the country off the cliff? Their focus
is in the now, is in the votes.
Is in the Santa Claus aspect of it. Right? Is I gave you free health care.
That's right.
And by the way, a lot of these guys who do that kind of thing get statues in Washington, D.C., right? If you go all over West Virginia, there are statues of Robert Byrd. Robert Byrd School, Robert Byrd Highway, Robert Byrd Medical Center. Why? Did Robert Byrd fund any of this? No. What he did was looted the treasury and allocated the money to this. And that's why there are statues of this guy who was a terrible person.
Well, we know
We know why.
How terrible.
His history in the Klan. We've depicted him in our movies. And by the way, he's a mentor both to Obama and to Hillary by their own admission. So, but look, I think the good news is that this big, beautiful bill, for all its flaws, is going to go through. Big win for Trump. And Trump is getting a lot of other wins now, like the Supreme Court win on the nationwide injunctions. That was a really big one.
Yeah, it was. So jurisprudence. So,
let's talk about that because our next topic is the court. And you are making a point which I want you to italicize about the fact that we often look at the court, and the media covers the court. There's the left wing, there's the right wing, right? And so they do a scorecard. Well, in the recent session, the conservatives were in the majority 85% of the time. No surprise, it's a conservative court. But your point is, hey, those classifications are kind of misleading. Now, why is that?
Yeah, because you cannot count with 100% certainty how the so-called conservative judges are going to vote, are going to go. You can, however,
count on the liberals
because they do stick together and they do a form of activism that our judges never do. They just never do because they follow the Constitution, and the left wing judges do not. They really don't. They try. It's the dead what is it called? The dead form argument and the live
Oh,
form
yeah,
argument.
right. Our side believes the Constitution is
Is
dead in the
dead.
sense that you
That's
have to
right.
follow the Constitution as written,
As-
and they believe it's a living Constitution.
It's a living constitution that can be changed according to the times. So,
And what you're really saying is that if you truly had a left-right court, right, then just as the leftists do leftist things, our side could be counted on to do right-wing things.
That's right.
But let's look at an example because I think this will dramatize and clarify what you're saying. Let's say, for example, and this wouldn't happen, but it's a hypothetical. Let's say that the U.S. Congress passed a law that gave all kinds of benefits and subsidies to trans people, right? And that law went before today's court. What would happen is the conservative majority would say that we have to be deferential to the legislature. We may not approve of this law.
That's right.
It may have all kinds of socially
well,
bad effects.
it was like gay marriage.
Gay marriage, but right.
I mean, they left it to the states. But-
No, in fact, with the gay marriage decision,
It was, yeah.
they decided that the states could not restrict gay marriage and that gay marriage is a constitutional
that's
right.
right. That's
That's
right.
what they decided on the gay marriage
and
issue.
we at the time did have a majority, did we not?
We had a majority, and yet the
see?
conservative
That's
majority
right.
went on that. And so you're saying that our side plays by the rules and their side
Does
votes
not.
left wing. Their side, the judges act as if they are like senators.
That's right.
And our judges act like judges. So you're saying that these are not ideological equivalents?
They're not.
They're two different species. Yeah, I think that's a very important point for people to
Yeah,
to
and
recognize.
that's why when they get mad at like Amy Coney Barrett, they're like, oh look, she's going rogue and she hates Trump and all of this, and obviously she is probably not partisan at all. She's probably not. I mean, she may vote Republican, but you know that she's probably not a partisan hack. She basically goes back to the founding, to the Constitution, and that is how she rules.
She's a constitutionalist.
She's a constitutionalist.
And I think, by the way, so is Roberts. Now, Roberts, because he's the chief, he sees his job as protecting the integrity of the court as a whole. It's almost like he has another job.
Right,
It's
right.
not just to be a justice.
Yeah, because Obamacare really threw me on that one with him.
Right.
You know,
Because a true reading of Obamacare would have struck it down.
yes,
But it's almost like what Roberts did was he's about to strike it down, and then he finds a loophole.
he does.
And he creates the
He
loophole. He doesn't even
creates
find it. He
it.
creates it. And he basically says, well, you know what? If it's a mandate, it would have to be unconstitutional. But guess what?
It's a tax.
What if we look at it as a tax?
Yes.
Well, Congress obviously has the power to tax. So that's legitimate. So I think that's a case where,
And because we know it was not put in as a tax. We know that.
on the contrary, the people who put it forward, in Obama included, said, we want to make it very clear that this is not a tax. This is, in fact, we are just going to make the insurance
mandate.
companies do this. It's a mandate.
Yes.
And then Roberts goes, well, actually,
Actually,
you're
you know
mistaken.
What, guys? If you make it a tax, then we can get this,
Yeah.
through, which I thought was a little bit of a treasonous act on his part. And
It was
so,
very bad.
So
Very, very bad.
I was not like, I thought, okay, he's a constitutionalist, but I think he went too far there. I
He
think
did.
he literally gave it to him. He gave it to him on a silver platter.
Yeah, and I think he did it out of political motives,
Yeah.
for sure. I think Amy Coney Barrett, a lot of people have realized with this latest opinion, is on the side of the angels. I mean, she's one of the
Yeah.
good ones.
Yeah.
Now, again, I wouldn't say she's not as reliable as Alito or Thomas, but guess what? There are others who aren't either, right?
Mm-hmm.
So our majority is not a majority, you could say, on the hard right. You've got a spectrum.
Yes.
Roberts, I think, is the closest to the
Yes.
middle. Then come Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett.
Yeah.
And I would put
But I think that's a perfect representation of the conservatives in America.
Right. Good point.
Right?
Yeah,
we're not all on the same side. I mean, as far as, some people are really far right, some people are more center, some people are more like in the middle.
Well, you often say that you're a mainstream Republican, that you're not, because sometimes I think people have a wrong idea that somehow the Trump base, I want to talk about this term for a second, the base, because even when Trump bombed Iran, there were a bunch of people, he's alienated the base. And I'm like, no, he's actually not alienated the base. The base is the mainstream of the Republican Party, right? If you look at an election, how does Trump get to 51%? The simple truth of it is Republicans straight out provide him with about 45% or 43%. He needs the other 7 or 8 to get over the top, right? And so the independents, the new black voters, some of the MAGA, the newcomers to MAGA who aren't traditional Republicans, that's where you get the 7 to 8. But that's not the base. Who's the base? The base is basically the soccer mom, the small business guy, the evangelical Christian or the regular church-going Catholic, the patriot, the military family or the veterans families, the guy who's a cop or
the
retired cop,
owner.
small business owners
Yep.
and entrepreneurs. This is the true base of the Republican Party. And you're saying they can't be put on one specific point. They're a spectrum too.
It's a spectrum. Yeah, I think more so than the left. I think the Democrats have really gone to the dark side. Pretty much all of them.
Well, I think that the rank and file Democrats are still a spectrum. But what happens, I think, is the Democrats have created a political machine where, let's say if you're running for Congress and you're a centrist Democrat, they will tell you, we'll give you lots of money. You can run as kind of center-right a campaign as you need to win. But we, on critical votes,
We control you.
we control you.
Yeah.
We're going to tell you how to vote on the big ones. And we don't care if it offends your constituency because we want to get the legislation passed. In the end, the Democrats are about the legislation. Sometimes I think we are too focused on re-election. We need to get the laws passed.
Yeah.
The laws are long-lasting.
We need to use the Pelosi principle.
The Pelosi principle. Pass the law
Yeah.
and then let the election chips fall
That's
where
right.
they
That's
may.
right.
Mike Lindell and the employees of MyPillow want to thank you, my viewers and listeners, for your continued support. Mike has a passion to help everyone get the best sleep of their life. He didn't stop with just the best pillow. He created the best bed sheets ever. And I want to talk about the Percale bed sheets because there's an incredible offer. You can get a set for as low as $24.98. The MyPillow Percale sheets are breathable. They have a cool, crisp feel. They have deep pockets to fit over any mattress. They look and feel great, which means a better night's sleep for me, which is important for my busy schedule. Also, for a limited time, when your order is over $100, you get $100 in free digital gifts. Here's the number to call, 800-876-0227. Again, it's 800-876-0227, or go to mypillow.com. Use promo code Dinesh. You're going to get the Percale MyPillow bed sheets as low as $24.98. All right, let's talk about Zoran Mamdani and young people, why they are attracted to socialism. Why do you think that is?
Well, because a lot of young people think that the government is there to give them things.
But why do they think that? Like you and I didn't think that.
We didn't think that. Well, I think also just, look, movie stars, singers,
The people that they think are
entertainment
cool.
community, they're all on that side. So
Right.
it makes it cool to be on that side.
Right.
And a lot of, like Hollywood people, remember they used to go to Venezuela and they used to tout Hugo Chavez's socialism.
Danny Glover.
Yeah, Danny Glover, of course, Sean Penn. They would go down there and say how wonderful Hugo Chavez was because he was giving to the poor. They never once, and I, by the way, think that they were paid by Hugo Chavez to do this. I think that.
Oh.
Okay. But never once did they think, well, who are they getting the money from? Who are they robbing?
Right.
Right?
Not
So-
only that, but I think they never asked this simple question. If Hugo Chavez was a man of the people, he's a man of the poor, how did his family end up with...
Billionaires.
Right.
Yeah, how did they end up billionaires?
I don't know if it goes unnoticed because, by the way, it happens to Democrats here, right? Nancy
They
Pelosi
get really
is
rich.
exorbitantly
Yes.
rich. The Clintons have made off like bandits. The Obamas are centimillionaires.
Biden.
So all these men of the people and women of the people are making pretty good.
Yes. So the kids, the younger people, they think, first of all, tell me one person in America that says that they're socialists and live like socialists.
Right.
Show me.
Right.
Who does that? Who rejects all capitalism?
Right.
Right? Who doesn't have a bank account?
Not only that, like who doesn't have like at least 2 homes?
Yeah.
Let's start with Zoran Mamdani.
Yeah.
His family has more than 2 homes.
Okay.
Let's start with Bernie Sanders.
Right.
He's up to 3. I'm
That's-
sure he's thinking about number 4.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? The Obamas we know built on Martha's Vineyard.
That's
not their
right.
only home. They have Kalorama in
That's
Washington
right.
D.C.
So they don't live
None of them do.
like communists or like socialists. They don't.
Yeah.
But people are so dumb. It's almost like, I always talk about Jim Jones and the people that drank the Kool-Aid. Well, Jim Jones also drank the Kool-Aid, so he died with them, right?
Right.
But the Kool-Aid drinking
The
Democrats, socialists, they're the only ones drinking the Kool-Aid.
They're more like the Jim Jones who says, listen,
Yeah.
guys, come down to Guyana, right?
Yeah.
He hands out the Kool-Aid and he slips out the back door
That's
after
right.
Emptying everybody's pockets.
That's right. They
Right?
themselves
Yeah.
don't drink the Kool-Aid.
This in some ways is also true of the mullahs in
Yeah,
Iran,
exactly,
right?
yes.
$25,000 if you're willing to be a suicide bomber. And if
Yeah.
one of those young guys goes, hey, Khamenei, listen to me. I'm 24 years old. I have the rest of my life ahead of me. You're 86. Why don't you be the suicide bomber? Oh, no. Allah doesn't want it that way.
I'm going in a bunker.
I'm going to hide in my bunker. That's right.
Yeah, no,
Not me.
So these guys, it's just that I think that they are so uninformed and they think it's really cool to be a socialist and they don't understand what being a communist or being a socialist actually is. They don't realize that it's equal misery. They don't get that.
Now, there's a second factor which is more sympathetic to young people, and I think that's this. The biggest decision that young people make at that age is the issue of the ratio of what they are earning, i.e. their salary, their take-home salary after taxes, and their mortgage payment. Right? Because that's your single biggest expense. I mean, think back. At a young age, we had to pay rent. That was our biggest expense. Later, you have a mortgage. That's your biggest expense. Maybe your car is your second biggest expense. So in our generation, it used to be the case that you could buy a house. I'm trying to remember what I paid for the first condo that I bought. About $200,000, I think, as I remember. I was renting before that. But with a quite modest salary, I was able to make that mortgage payment. And then, of course, that went up in value. I sold the condo. I took the profit. I made a down payment on an actual residential house. We could do that in our generation. Not that it was easy.
No.
But it was doable,
Yeah.
right? I think what's happened is that because of inflation, it may be 2% or 3% a year, but it adds up, right? So over 30 years, these homes that were $200,000 are now like $700,000.
See, our kids can't do that. That is what's sad. They need our help.
Well,
that's
that's what I'm getting at. So look, there are families who are included, but a lot of people, are on their own, and they basically say, for me to buy the same kind of house, not that my parents maybe even have at the age of 60, but that my parents had when they were my age,
A starter home.
I can't do it.
Yeah.
It is out of reach. And not to mention, these young people also have exorbitant student loan debt. And so I think socialism for them is not an ideology.
It's a
It's a
necessity?
life raft.
Yeah.
Right?
They need,
it's like, well, how can I get some
Right,
help?
right.
Look, this guy's coming along. He's going to freeze the rents. Oh, great. He's gonna build more housing and just like give away homes. Oh, great.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. The idea of not having to struggle is like to them great. Like, hey, this person is telling me that I'm going to have like really cheap rent. I'm going to be able to be able to live and not have to worry. Why not vote for him, right? So I think
you don't, when you're in that situation, you don't calculate like where is it coming from.
No.
Like you gave me an interesting example, which was when you were much younger, and your mom had seen an ad for one of those, what do you call it? Timeshares. No, but anyway, I'm not going to go into it, but here's why it's funny, and here's why it's applicable, right?
Yeah.
Because your mom was like, hey, listen, let's go and listen to this presentation. And they tell you very clearly, if you listen to this presentation, sometimes they put you up for a few days.
Not only do you get put up for a few days, but you get a free TV.
Oh, you got a free TV, right? Okay, so here you go. So what I'm getting at is it never crossed your mom's mind. In fact, why should it, right?
It crossed my mind.
It crossed your mind, but not your mom's mind. Like, where's the TV coming from? Like, where do they get a TV to? But see, for them, now, of course, there's an answer to that question, which is that they want to draw you into this quite expensive long-term financial commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And they can surely afford to give away a TV up front if they can
Because they can get enough people to do it,
if they can get enough people
right?
to do it. So that's the
Yeah.
answer to the question. But
Right.
my point is, psychologically, the person getting the benefit doesn't worry about where the resources
care.
are coming or care.
Yeah.
And same with Mamdani. Nobody's asking Mamdani, like, where's the money coming from? I even talked about the fact that he's got this grocery store plan.
Yeah.
There is no money. It's fiction. But people don't care, and in a way I don't even think he cares because he may not even do it. You know,
Yeah.
he's like, let me get across the finish line,
Yeah.
I'll worry about it then.
Yep.
All right.
True.
Let's talk
True.
about Bryan Kohberger.
Ooh.
Because this is a case that has intrigued you. You're more
Yeah.
informed about it than a lot of people,
Yeah.
by the way. And I think you were, well, talk about a little bit about your dream.
Oh.
Because the reason is, I think it's pretty fascinating. And you and I had a conversation about it. You told me about this dream because the dream had a lot of details about the murder,
Yeah.
right? That have never been publicly released. And I told you, I go, listen, I don't know if you're clairvoyant, but I said, but look, I said, listen, we'll have a trial. All this new information that we don't know as of yet will come out, and you can then match it up against your dream and see if your dream is indeed prophetic, or was it just an imaginative rendering of how it could have happened,
Yeah.
bearing no necessary relationship to what
Right.
actually happened. But now you'll never know.
Unless he says, right?
Unless he
confesses it.
Right.
Yeah, no. And this dream I had, last week or 2 weeks ago?
Your
Something
dream,
like that?
I think it was maybe, it was a couple weeks ago, right.
Yeah, so I dreamt that he killed these young people, and I could see it very clearly how he did it. So it was a really graphic dream.
It's like you were present.
Like I was watching him do
Right.
this, right? And he killed the two girls first, and then he killed the other girl, and then he killed the boy. In my
Last.
dream, I don't know if that's how it actually happened, but
Yeah.
that's in my dream. And he was very meticulous about how he left the scene. However, of course, he did forget that sheath, right?
Yeah.
But he goes to his car, and there was this big box of the Clorox wipes, one of those barrel-looking things.
Yeah.
He takes it out. He starts like cleaning his gloves. He starts cleaning all kinds of the seat. He takes off he had like a little like outfit on top of his clothes. And he puts it all in this black plastic bag, and he puts the knife in there too, ties it up, drives off, making sure that nothing, he cleans his steering wheel, he cleans the seats, everything, drives off. And it looks to me like it's another town. I don't know how far. In my dream, he's driving. He stops, and he basically takes the bag and he throws it in a dumpster. And I was looking in my dream. I was looking to see if there were any cameras that could have captured that, but he dumps it in a dumpster. And then he's on his way. And of course, I see him driving around and everything. And I wake up, and of course my heart rate. I mean, at this point I'm like, why on earth did I dream something so weird?
Well, not only
You
that,
know?
but as you know, normally dreams have they have a dream-like quality, and there's often even when you recall them, there's not a lot of detail. But here there's a lot of detail. In fact, including, as you say, the order of these murders and stuff. And so then when I told you, I guess it was yesterday, well, a couple of days ago, maybe now. He's done a plea deal.
Yeah.
And of course the families are super mad.
Well, they actually two of the victims' families are super mad, and they say that the state has failed them.
Yeah.
Right? The other two, the girl and I believe I can't forget.
Well, it might be the girl and the boy.
Yeah, they say that it spared them from a trial.
Oh, right. And we've seen other cases where people have that view that it would be very traumatic.
Yeah.
But I think with regard to the Gonsalves family, and I think it's the Kernodle family.
Yeah, the Kernodle family.
Those families wanted this guy to get the death penalty.
Yeah, they
and
did.
I think and you told me that in Idaho it's the firing squad.
Yeah, firing squad. Oh, yeah.
So
I think they wanted to see him on a firing squad.
In
front of a firing squad.
Now,
I think
let me explain why this, I think, is why their expectations are reasonable. Every time you go to a movie and you see just a typical movie where a murder mystery, a gangster movie, a horror movie, it doesn't really matter. Some horrific things are done, and you see them. And at the end of the movie, you notice that the bad guy, or whether it's a monster, they are never like the cop arrests him and puts him in a car. The monster has to be obliterated, put into smithereens. The bad guy has got to fall off a 30-story building or be thrown off a cliff. And then, not only thrown off a building, but then he's got to land on a taxi, or he's got to land where some spoke goes through his body. Now, why is that? The reason is that the human psyche wants retribution. The eye for an eye concept is deeply built into our idea of justice. And so I think for these people, I bet you that if you really sat them down, they would say the firing squad is not enough. And in fact, you said, I think last week.
Yeah, and I was lectured about it too. My young son says, "Mom, as a Christian, you can't do that. You have to have love for people."
Well, okay, but here. I don't agree with that, and here let me tell you why. Christianity moves in two steps. The first step is got to be the full acknowledgement of what has been done wrong, and the full recognition of what the correct penalty is. So let's start with that with regard to God. For God, what is done wrong is human sin, and the penalty, fully justified, is damnation for every human being. Think about that. Far worse than a firing squad, far worse than doing to them what they did, far worse. Eternal damnation is just. Once you have gotten there, then the person who has been wronged, God, can say, but I forgive, I exercise mercy. But notice that all of this would be meaningless if God were to say to you, what you've done is not that bad. You don't deserve damnation. Basically, it's something I'm going to overlook. It's no big deal. It didn't even matter to me what you did. Why would I care if you sinned? I'm God. It doesn't affect me whether you sin or you don't sin. But God does not take that view. God starts with an eye for an eye. And it's almost like saying God starts with the Old Testament and ends with the New.
That's the starting point.
It's a starting point. And similarly here, we always begin with what is the just outcome in the situation. Now, the families can come forward and they can forgive him. The state is in a different position, by the way. If you commit a crime against the state has to, on behalf of the security of the citizens, is in a little different position. The state can't forgive in the same way that if somebody steals money from your wallet, you can forgive them.
In this case, the state used the death penalty as a bargaining tool.
Yes and no. The reason I say no is because I think that my understanding is that a jury is instructed that if you're going to give the death penalty, there need to be no mitigating circumstances. Now, I think if Kohberger stands up in his trial and goes, I admit I did it, I shouldn't have done it, something came over me, I had these weird delusions about, let's say, being a serial killer, I fell into this trance where I thought I was Bundy, I did it, I'm really sorry, I want to apologize to the families who are here. That's mitigating circumstances right there. So I bet you that the prosecution goes, if he's willing to plead, that's all he needs to do is stand up and say that, and all the expense of the trial. In fact, the trial will be a kind of defeat. You convicted him, but he didn't get the death penalty.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as there is this at least apparent contrition, we might as well
and
take
we know,
the plea.
And he, in court, he did plead guilty to all 4 counts.
Right.
He will get a life sentence for each one of them without the possibility of parole.
Yeah.
But I told you that he's gonna use this, like he's gonna have fan mail. He's gonna get a girlfriend.
You mean like the Menendez brothers?
Yeah. He's gonna live it up.
He'll have the criminologist that he was a criminology student.
Right.
He's going to have them writing him letters,
study
fill out a
him.
survey.
Yeah. I think so.
So you don't think this is the last we've heard of Bryan Kohberger?
I don't think so. Because if you think about it, why did he do this in the first place, if not notoriety?
Yeah, you're probably right.
Subscribe to the Dinesh D'Souza podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify, or watch on Rumble, YouTube, and SalemNow.com.